This is the third video we're doing on the Custom House, or the Federal House as we know it today. As I was looking over Omar Conger's speech during the laying of the cornerstone for the Custom House, I saw a couple of things I thought was interesting and thought I would share with you, something that highlights the reason for the Custom House being built. He said this: "And here, my fellow citizens, at this great eastern gate of commerce, we may, if we will, sit and hold the keys and lock and unlock the portals through which will pass a wealth of commerce unrivaled in the land. From the east, the Grand Trunk and Great Western Railroads pour their vast wealth of freight upon our shores. From the west, the south, and the north, the Chicago and Lake Huron and Grand Trunk Railroads and the waters of the Straits and of Lake Huron bring to our door the wealth and commerce of the whole region of the lakes. In the season of navigation of 1871, the aggregate number of steamers and vessels passing the Gratiot Lighthouse was 26,486. In 1872, it was 32,976. In 1873, 39,188. On what other waters of the world floats such a fleet of commerce?" Mr. Conger was right. There was much commerce going up and down the St. Clair River even before the steamships. Right here you can see they would take a line of schooners and a tug would tow them through the river, because obviously they couldn't sail through the river. This picture here is a little clearer of how they towed them through the river. And for about a decade or so, you would have the schooners and the steamers going down the river together. The ship on the right is a typical schooner, but the one in front of it with the smokestack with the steam coming out, this was kind of a combination schooner steamer. You can see the mast on these steamers. The ship owners and the crews are very reluctant to get rid of the mast, even if they didn't need them if they had the steam. Relinquishing their sails at sea after using it for hundreds of years was a terrifying step to take. The American ship City of Savannah crossed the Atlantic under steam in 1819. It hadn't reached Ireland before it used up its coal and had to run up its sails. What would have happened if they hadn't had their sails? And I think that's on everybody's mind as they get out into the lake. It's all right if you're near shore, but you're out there, you can't even see land. What happens if the steam engine goes down? What do we do then? So they kept the mast for as long as they possibly could. The beginning of the end of the sail was actually the Civil War, mainly between the Battle of the Yankee Monitor and the Confederate Merrimack. That's when the ship started to put guns where the mast used to be. But that's a whole other story, so let's get back to looking at these ships on St. Clair River. This photograph was taken at the rapids. That's where the Blue Water bridges are today. Here's a group of these ships stacked up. An unusual picture because of the fact that normally you don't see this on the American side. You saw it in Sarnia in their harbor, but not so much here. And so I was very interested to see where this could possibly be. I still don't know for sure, but I think I might know. I think this was at the south end of Pine Grove Park, or just south of Pine Grove Park. And the reason I say that is this picture here. This is looking at the old waterworks in Pine Grove Park, looking south. But if we zoom in here, you can see all these ships that are stacked up. It looks like just at the south end of Pine Grove Park. That's why Omar Conger at his speech told the audience that this was the Great Eastern Gate of Commerce. And it was. He went on to say, "In the last 8 years, there have arrived at this port 316,419 immigrants, enough to form a state, a greater number than at any port in the Union except New York. And here they pay no head money and are subject to no swindling or extortion." So I guess this went on at the other ports. So who kept track of all this commerce that was going up and down St. Clair River? Well, that was the Custom House. Although the building itself was called the Custom House, the actual Custom House, or perhaps you might call it the Custom Department, would be located on the second floor of the Custom House. And one of the ways they kept track of the river traffic was to actually count it. How did you do that? Well, you went from the second floor to the third floor and all the way up into the cupola, and you looked out the window and you pretty much got this view right here. And there was custom clerks designated to count the ships as they went up and down the St. Clair River. The second floor was devoted to the custom house and the courtroom. It was reached by the broad iron staircase at the east end of the building. A hall 12 foot wide, well lighted, and with marble and slate tiling floor, reaches from the east end to the courtroom door. I wish I had a photograph of the courtroom in its original state because I believe it was a beautiful courtroom. So I guess we'll have to use our imagination. But we do have a description here that helps us. It goes on to say, you enter the courtroom through wide doors at the end of the hall. The courtroom itself ran clear across the building, 56 feet, and was 35 feet wide. It occupied the second and the third stories. So it had 2 rows of windows. So those windows that you see on the second and the third floor, that was all for the courtroom. It was wainscoted with black walnut and butternut, and the walls are relieved with plaster ornamentations. The plastering in this room and throughout the whole building is equal in finish to anything in the West. In the ceiling are 2 large iron ventilators, from which ventilating pipes extend through the attic into ventilators through the roof. It was heated by Vermont red marble fireplaces, and the rest of the building was also heated with the same type of fireplace. The third floor was gained access by a staircase on the east end similar to the one to the second floor. The third floor carried a variety of federal entities. It was occupied by the inspectors of the hulls and boilers, the collector of internal revenue, the United States commissioners, the Deputy United States Marshal, and it went on. Later on, the Department of Agriculture was there as well. What you've been looking at here came out of a city directory showing the different facilities that were in the custom house. Here's an ad I found that intrigued me, because if you read the bottom, it says that this office, which is a lumber and lath company, A.H. Fish, was located over the post office. I thought, oh, wait a minute. This is a federal building for federal offices. How in the world did a private business get an office in the federal building? So I start digging, and come to find out, A.H. Fish was the postmaster in 1848. So I think a few strings were pulled. This little chart here gives you an idea of what went into this building. We're very fortunate to still have a building of this caliber still with us today and not torn down or caught on fire or disposed of in some other way. Between 1932 and 1933, there was an addition constructed and added to the rear of the custom house. And you can see it here in the satellite view. It's rare to find a postcard that has that addition on it. Almost all the postcards are before the addition, but I do have one. There was another very important part to the custom house, at least from a cosmetic view, and that was the fountain that was out in front of the house. And you can see it here as we zoom in. The fountain and the cast iron sculptures arrived about a year after the building was completed in 1878. At Michigan Representative Omar Conger's urging, the fountain, including the 2 statues, was purchased from the J.W. Fisk Ornamental Ironworks Company out of New York for $875. The construction supervisor declared it complete in the letter dated July 25, 1878. And said it presented a very nice appearance. For many years it graced the corner of Water and 6th Street, providing a bit of classical inspiration for the bustling port town. This is a pretty good picture of the fountain. If these 2 ladies would just hurry along and get out of the way, we could see the other 2 ladies that are sitting in the fountain. One lady was named Meg, and the other was named Mamie. Mike Connell wrote a newspaper article regarding the origin of these two names for these lovely ladies. They were named by a newspaper columnist by the name of Hale Bennett Buckeridge. Buckeridge is all but forgotten, but once upon a time he wrote a popular column for Port Huron's leading newspaper, the Daily Times. It was Buckeridge who came up with Meg and Mamie as nicknames for the twin statue of scantily clad young women. The girls adorned an ornate fountain outside the Customs House, known today as the Federal Building, at the corner of 6th and Water Street. Meg and Mamie sat back to back, each with chin in hand, behind jets of water cascading from the fountain's upper bowls. One of the girls gazed east toward the St. Clair River in Canada, while the other looked west toward Lapeer Avenue in the Michigan interior. Buckeridge played on this, using the twins to debate issues from opposing viewpoints. If he were writing today, he might offer this conversation. Meg would say, "Obamacare is the bomb." Mamie would say, "You're smoking crack, sister." In an article posted by Jeff Jensen from the Office of Historic Preservation, he says this: by 1913, the fountain had fallen out of favor. On September 5, 1913, the custodian of Port Huron received a letter from Washington about a petition from local businessmen to have the fountain removed, and soon the government inspector was on site to assess the situation. His report from October 13, 1913 is telling. He recommended the removal of the old, rusted, and needed of repair fountain for a laundry list of reasons. 1. It is out of scale. 2. The winter cover is large and barn-like and considered unsightly. 3. Because it is so near the curb, the mist is a public nuisance, especially to the ladies, and it also freezes in winter and spring. 4. The subject matter may have been appropriate at the time of its installation, but in this age of modern society and general censorship, it is said to be considered morally objectionable, and the figures are subject to ridicule by the local papers. The inspector found that the city park commissioner wouldn't erect such a fountain in a public park because the nudity complained of. 5. The custodian complains of finding dead dogs in the catch basin and children have nearly drowned. And 6. The basin is a catch-all for rubbish. Here's a photograph of that barn-like cover they put over the fountain in the cold weather. Actually, for a cover, I think it looks pretty classy. At first, it appeared the fountain would be sold for scrap for a mere $22.50, but since that price didn't meet the valuation placed upon it by the government, that sale did not go through. It was subsequently revalued, sold to the Lighthouse Department, and moved to Fort Gratiot, where it stood until about 1932. When it met an inglorious end as a result of the lighthouse expansion project. This photograph here, you can see the fountain was moved to the lighthouse park. You can see the lighthouse in the background. And something else you can see, it's not the same fountain that stood in front of the Federal Building. It appears that part of it is missing. Compare the two side by side and you can see the difference. So what happened to the rest of it? Who knows? It's a mystery. It did appear that this was a very popular place to have your picture taken in front of, as you can see for the next couple of photographs. And in this photograph here, you can see the statues are in very good shape. You can see the high gloss on the back of one of the statues if you look closely. The Coast Guard and the Lighthouse Service would merge in 1939, but they were still separate agencies in 1923 when the southern portion of the lighthouse property was granted to the Coast Guard. And as they started construction on the Coast Guard buildings, it was obvious that the fountain had to go. It was in the way. When they wanted to take the fountain down, they come to the realization that the statues were gone. Where was Meg and Mamie? It became a mystery that would never be solved. In this article from the Times-Herald regarding the search for Meg and Mamie, it says this: Fred Matthews, like many other unemployed men in 1932, he was at the site of the Coast Guard station watching the excavation from the basement of the building and hoping to obtain some employment. The foreman of the operation demanded that the fountain, which did not have the statues on it at that time, be removed, and Mr. Matthews volunteered to do so, hoping to sell it for scrap. A team of horses toppled the cast iron dish of the fountain, and Mr. Matthews, with the help of his brother, broke it up with a sledgehammer. It wasn't an easy job, he remembers. It was at least 1.5 inches thick, and it rang like a bell when it was hit. Mr. Matthews and his brother hauled away the iron and sold it to Draper Machine Company for $17, but the statues were not with it. If they had been, said Mr. Matthews, we would have sold them too. The beautiful fountain that graced the front lawn of the custom house was no more. What a sad ending for such a beautiful thing. How wonderful it must have been to be able to walk by the custom house and not only see the beautiful fountain, but to hear the water flowing off of it and feeling the gentle mist upon your face. I found out there are 4 fountains that was built by the same company during the same period in 1870s that are still in existence. One of these fountains are in St. Joseph, Michigan. It's called the Maid of the Mist Fountain, and the ladies on this fountain are called Constance and Hope. Looking at this photograph takes me back to the days when Meg and Mamie were in existence, being enjoyed by the people who walk past them. So pretend with me for a moment, as we walk around this fountain, that they are not Constance and Hope, but they're Meg and Mamie, and enjoying us as we are enjoying them. In 1972, this fountain was in very bad shape because of the fountain's exposure to the varying weathers for years. The fountain of the 2 maidens were dismantled. The figures' faces, arms, and legs were greatly damaged. There was almost no hope of refurbishing them. Fortunately, wiser heads prevailed, and the entire fountain was completely restored in the spring of 1974. Oh, how I wish poor Sharon could have saved their fountain. Join me in my next video and we'll mosey on past the fountain down Water Street, and we'll take a left on 6th Street and see what there is there.